And we welcome you live here in the circle where we just wrapped up night one of action in the Women's College World Series, where UCLA shuts out Florida State 4-0 and completes a 12 hours of softball, folks. We started at noon Eastern. We're finishing at midnight. I'm Eric Lopez. Victor Anderson is in Oklahoma City. He's going to be joining us later in the program from Oklahoma City. We hope to be joined momentarily by our guest, Christy Fox, UNLV head coach, two-time national champion, two-time All-American at UNLV. And she'll help us analyze what we have witnessed today. The first day of the Women's College World Series since 2019. We had 4 games, and certainly pitching was the story today. It really took a lot of the action going on here. Rachel Garcia with the shutout. Of course, then you had Alabama beating Arizona 5-1. The big story of the day, James Madison knocking off number 1 Oklahoma in 8 innings, 4-3. Odyssey Alexander with the victory there. And, of course, Oklahoma State beating Georgia 3-2, which means winners bracket games Friday night on ESPN2. Make a note of that. It'll be James Madison against Oklahoma State and UCLA and Alabama, which should be a heavyweight title fight. We'll get into that a little bit as the program goes on, but let's bring in somebody who knows a thing or two about playing in the Women's College World Series, two-time national champion, two-time All-American, I believe still holds the record for most hits in a Women's College World Series, Hall of Famer, Arizona Sports Hall of Famer, the current head coach at UNLV, Christy Fox, joining us live here. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You have the advantage. You're out in Vegas, what, a 3-hour time zone from the East Coast?
Yeah, no doubt. Are you tired or what? You can't be tired when you just got to watch all those games, though.
No. We've waited 2 years for this. Are you kidding me? Well, give me your thoughts here. You've watched all the 4 games. We just finished watching UCLA pitch a shutout, 3 straight shutouts for the Bruins. I guess we could start there. Rachel Garcia didn't win Player of the Year, but that doesn't mean she's still not the best player in the sport. Dominant performance, and UCLA's base running, I thought, was the difference. And then, Maya Brady, pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, across the board, I'll just say that I thought the pitchers, even the losing pitchers today, I think that they really came out and handled, being in that atmosphere. Like you said, after 2 years, and it does matter, let me tell you, when you get on that stage and you're playing in front of that many people. I thought all the pitchers across the board really handled it real well. A little bit more on the defensive side, I saw some breakdowns, and offensively across the board, they kind of took a little bit to get going. But I really liked what I saw from the pitchers, staying calm, composed, hitting spots, even when they were giving things up, bouncing back quickly. Garcia, we had to face her earlier this year, and she was sharp. We were actually one of the first teams to face her after she kind of took some time off from that injury. She looked really sharp. She looked good. Obviously, they're going to need her to stay sharp throughout this whole tournament with that new news that we're kind of hearing about, Faramo in her hand. Yeah,
Megan Faramo, press release from UCLA. This was reported by ESPN. She's in Southern California, waiting to see a specialist about her hand. She's, quote, day to day. Who knows what that means? The good news is Rachel Garcia is used to picking up the gear, the slack and carrying the load. She's done that before. And do you think, you mentioned she missed some time earlier this year with an injury. Could that benefit her right now in that maybe she's fresher than she wouldn't be if she was playing a full year?
Yeah, definitely. I think that UCLA didn't get quite to play that full schedule because of different reasons through COVID and things like that. And they did a really good job of giving all of their pitchers time and seeing what they're capable of and keeping a good mix. And I think because of that, we'll be able to see Garcia to maybe be a little bit more rested. And if they can stay in the winner's bracket, that's huge.
It sets up a heavyweight matchup with Alabama, which we'll get into. But Maya Brady, they obviously, the broadcast mentioned a lot about her uncle, Tom Brady. It's well known. But she's making a name for herself pretty good there. She crushed that ball by Watson that put really the game away with that 2-run homer. Talk about her. You faced her. That's a super talent it's part of the future here of UCLA. The future is now, but for them to try to repeat, she's going to be a big key here, isn't she?
Yeah, just talk about an athlete, right? Just so athletic, so many tools, runs well, hits for power, hits balls in the gaps, even if she hits it in the infield, you know, she's got a chance. So just a tremendous, tremendous athlete. And I think that, you know, she's handling the spotlight really, really well. And like you said, making a name for herself. I know that the storyline has really been a lot about her family. And I'm excited to see her to continue to just kind of create her own story. And she's doing that here on the biggest stage. So, I mean, just a tremendous athlete, handling the pressure of the stage really well. And I just think she's kind of got that versatility that softball is really showing right now.
If you're Kelly Anue Perez, you know, you had Tom Brady give the team a speech on Zoom earlier today. They mentioned on the broadcast. Are you dialing him up now to give a speech before each game now? I mean,
it doesn't get much better than that. My sister went to UCLA for a little while. And so she said she saw him on campus all the time. Like, he's a mainstay, like working out in the weight room. So, I mean, when you're surrounding yourself with just these elite athletes and seeing what they do and making a point to be in the weight room, and, he's his own version of the GOAT. And so you see all these people, you got Lisa Fernandez, they're surrounded by all of this greatness and getting these examples of, hey, this is how we're going to do things. And now you're getting to talk to you, and it's not just showing you, he's actually telling you. I mean, I think it's just a huge resource. And she was very smart to kind of pull that one out of her back pocket at a really great time.
Let's talk about defense. Your team, UNLV, this year ranked 12th in fielding percentage. You've been a really good defensive team since your arrival.
It was a bad year for us.
Well, if it is, then, 12 is – I wish I could have a bad year for finishing 12th in the country. And you were a great defensive player yourself. I want to mention there was a key play, and they brought it up. Jessica Mendoza brought it up, where UCLA got that first run. Washington got on base. They throw the ball to try to get her out at first. It was an errant throw. She took second. She would eventually score on the infield ball hit because of her speed. Mendoza felt as an infielder – on that ball where Washington scored, you can't throw the ball to first. Just talk about that defense, because Florida State's very good defensively, but a couple of miscues there, if you want to call it miscues, kind of cost them that first run and give UCLA the lead and Garcia a lead to work with.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. The first play, it kind of bobbles around a little bit. Our big thing is don't make one mistake too, right? So she bobbles it, but then she tries to rush the throw. A single's a single. We got to really try to avoid putting them into scoring position. I thought the play at first, the first baseman did a great job of picking it. So if she doesn't even pick it, then we're not even talking about it all. Then I'm 100% on board with Mendoza. Don't throw it there. But if she puts it on the money, they had plenty of time to make that play at home, and they did. I mean, if she makes a good throw, it's going to be a good close play at home. It's tough, right? It's tough. Those ones they're bang bang plays, and hindsight, I'm like, yeah, don't throw it to first. But in the moment, she probably makes that play, all the time. And so I definitely think that they had time. UCLA took a risk in rolling her, and if we get a good throw home, I think they got a chance to make that play. So I don't really feel that much against that right there. It's one of those things when we're watching those games and we're now the backseat coaches. There's quite a few things today. I was, why did she do that? And I'm like, well, just like the players are on this stage and feeling the pressure and having moments carry over from the beginning of the game to later in the game, that happens to coaches too. So, I thought that they, obviously better throws. 2 better throws. I don't think the run scores, but defensively, I mean, you got to play the way the game you've been playing all year long. And if you've been making that play all year long, that's what you got to do when you get there.
And that's why Kirk Walker sent her Washington with the speed. And, right, as a third base coach, you want to make the defense make the play, force them to make the perfect throw and the tag, and put some pressure on them, especially in a game like that where Sandercock was throwing fantastic. I think she's shown why she's an All-American. I've seen her up close, shut out UCF, and she's been dominant in postseason, and she's taken it to a different level. She's like that next great Seminole pitcher that Lonnie seems to produce with Jessica Burrows and Megan King and on and on. And she's been tremendous, and I think that's part of the reason why Walker sent her, because, hey, let's just try to get a run. This might be our best shot to do it. It paid off for them, right? That's being aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, their offense kind of really hadn't done anything yet. And so you got to take the chance and kind of, as they say, like, break through, burst the bubble. And then as you saw, once they got one, they started having some really good at-bats since they started stringing things together and got those insurance runs later on. So, yeah, I mean, you got to take chances at this point in the season. You know what your players are capable of. He knows what the speed of those players up. He knows who's coming up next and what the opportunity is coming up next. Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely thought it was a great call on his part. He was sending her all the way. At first, I was like, oh, he's just sending her because the ball, he thought it was going up the middle. But no, he was definitely rolling her on that force at first. And, it was a really good call on his part.
So UCLA gets the shout out. Florida State offensively, this is not the typical Florida State offense of years past where they had a lot of power in the lineup with, players like Alex Powers and Jesse Warren, who was shown on TV. This is a team that's based on speed and trying to get on base. And that's tough when you're facing Rachel Garcia, who was dominant. What did you see there? Was there anything Florida State could have done? Or is that one of those where, hey, Rachel was on her game and Florida State was just on the wrong side of it?
Yeah, I thought that Rachel did a really good job. I liked what I thought Florida State's plan was. And even I think Coach I in her little, interview in the game said it as well, is that they're just trying to put it in play and make their defense work. And I thought that we saw, in the regional and the super regional, that UCLA hadn't really been tested defensively. They were getting lots of strikeouts, lots of weak hits at them. And when you're putting the ball in play hard early on, like in that regional and super regional, they were making some mistakes. So, shortening up, trying to put the ball in play against their defense. I liked that game plan, but UCLA obviously rose to the occasion. I mean, obviously they noticed in those last two tournaments, hey, we got to clean some things up. We saw some diving plays. I mean, the diving play to end the game was fantastic. I think that defensively they really stepped up. They're trying to put pressure on them running, and their catcher was ready to go every time. She didn't get him every time, but she was ready to go. So I thought that the UCLA really stepped up. I thought Florida State had a good game plan. Let's put some pressure on them, and then hopefully our big girls will get some of those big hits. And those hitters that they've really been depending on just didn't really get it done tonight.
You know what it's like to defend the title. Obviously, it's unique circumstances because we lost a year last year. But UCLA is the defending champs. A lot of their players was part of that 19 national title team. You were part of the 06 national title team and then came back in 07 to defend it and repeat it. What is that like coming back the next time after winning a national title? Is there extra pressure to repeat? Is there more confidence within the team? What is that like on the mindset after you've won one?
I think for me, I can only speak for myself. I almost felt like a weight was lifted. I got the full gamut of experience when it came to the Women's College World Series. You go to Arizona, it's an expectation, right? So I was actually as my freshman, I was a part of the first team that didn't get out of a regional to go to the World Series. So I got that experience. I got sophomore year experience of 2 in barbecue, and then, won a national championship in 06. And so it was a little bit of a weight lifted. Like, we've been here before, we've done this, and now we know what it takes, and we can go out and play a little bit more loose and relaxed. That was my experience. Today, I think that, now that UCLA got this one under their belt, I think we're going to see them playing a little bit more loose and relaxed as the tournament goes on.
Always to get that first one under the belt. And I think the thing that's helped them is, even though they're the champs and they're UCLA, they're kind of the afterthought, not an afterthought, but they're kind of the below the radar because so much attention is Oklahoma coming into the tournament, and we'll get into them later on. But I feel like that's kind of worked to UCLA's advantage, actually, to be the 2 UCLA's here, but, everybody's focusing on Oklahoma and their historic offense. And I think those players and watching them have been a part of their media availabilities, there's a lot of pride there and probably using that as motivation, right? The great players always find something to motivate themselves, whether, maybe Rachel, deep down says, you know what, I'm still the best player, even though I didn't win player of the year. And I'm sure some of those UCLA players, the motivation is, hey, we're the champs, not them. We beat them in 2 years. Let's show people. And so I think they're in a good spot here.
I do too. And I really like what their team has, right? You got a super pitcher on the mound, and then you just got versatility. You got Bree Perez, who I think is one of the most underrated players, is playing right now. She can hit home runs and she can drag one on you and you won't even know it hit you. They got speed. They can put pressure on you, make things happen. And I'm not allowed to say this because, I'm a Wildcat, but, I like what they look like. And when we played them in a doubleheader, and I was like, they're a good team and they got a lot of options and they have a lot of different ways to win. And I think that they're kind of hitting their stride. They kind of hit some bumps in the regional and super regional. And I think that were lessons learned there. Right. And so now they're ready to go as they kind of hit here, where I think OU's kind of hit a little bump here and learning some lessons here. And this is not the time. You want to be peaking right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Kelly Inouye Perez told me when I spoke to her in the Super Regional, this team has gone through adversity. Rachel Garcia was out for a time with an injury. Bubba Nichols was out. It just returned after her wrist injury. Obviously, with all the protocols out west, which you know about, a lot of West Coast programs got off to a later start because of that. I mean, I spoke to Jessica Allister at Stanford. They didn't have their first practice till February 4th. Which is kind of think about that when your season's supposed to start. And I kind of agree with you. I think they've been pushed. Fresno State with Haley Docini, who well, they had them. They had them 3 outs away from sending UCLA to the losers bracket. UCLA found a way to win, but they were pushed by Fresno in that regional and Minnesota. And then Virginia Tech with Keely Richard beat them that first game. That was a wake-up call. UCLA made 5 errors, but they've woken up because they haven't given up a run since.
Yeah, I think that those pitchers you just named are fantastic pitchers. So, I mean, between Docini, Pfizer, and then in Virginia Tech, I mean, they've been facing very, very good pitching heading into this week where, I mean, just across the board, the pitching looks very, very strong.
Of course, now that sets up UCLA in the winner's bracket game. They will play Alabama, who took care of Arizona. I'm sorry, I can only hold on so long. Although I love the 29 jersey on your background, by the way. That is pretty sweet. I think
special for you.
I appreciate that. I think Coach Kendra could have used your bat, although the way Montana Fouts was dealing, I'm not sure anybody could have helped Arizona tonight. What a performance for Montana Fouts. 16 strikeouts, the 5th pitcher in the history of the Women's College World Series to have 16 strikeouts or more in a 7-inning game. Joined the likes of Kat Osterman, Monica Abbott, Kalani Ricketts, among others, Tara Novello. That's a pretty who's list, and she was just dominant against an explosive Arizona offense. 2 hits, no walks, and Alabama looked really good. They've won now, I think, 19 in a row, and Montana Fouts was just – what did you see from her that just there was no answers?
Yeah, I mean, she was sharp. Her velocity was there. The rise ball was jumping. Arizona wasn't making adjustments to it, and she didn't really have to deviate from anything of her plan. So, I mean, she really just got to execute, throw the pitches that she wanted to, and she hit her spots and did a great job. I mean, that was one of the games. I mean, overall, the entire day, I think that her and Odyssey from JMU had 2 just really amazing outings. Obviously, Fouts got the shutout, so you would say that she probably had the best day overall. But it was just really impressive. And I mean, if they can keep her looking like that all weekend long, I think that they got a really good chance. I think that you ask any coach that's in this position, it's pitching, number one, playing solid defense, and then timely hitting, right? And we have a couple teams in this World Series that are more hitting based and really depend on that. And then we have the ones, and I think today you saw having that pitching is going to be huge. And then the timely hitting, bats they go a little bit up and down more so other than when you have that really great pitcher. So, I mean, Fouts, tip your hat. She did a great job. Arizona really struggled with the velocity and the up ball. And even in the 7th, when she gave up the home run, she was out there. She's just getting 3 outs. She's just throwing that. She's going right at him. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. She's not worried about a thing. She's throwing her pitches. And like she even said, I think at the end in the press conference, it was like, you know what? Yeah, I went right at her. She got one. It didn't matter. And I just got right back on and I went back to work. So, it was a really impressive outing by her.
Well, and it's really smart, too, because a lot of times, this pitchers with a lead like that get too cute try to like, hey, I want to pitch a shutout. And what happens? You give up a walk or two, and now all of a sudden you got a game. She went after the hitters. And you know what? So what? You gave up a home run. That's one run. You're still up 4. I think that's very smart. Plus, it saves her some pitches because, not to speculate, but let's assume we're probably assuming she's going to pitch in that winner's bracket game Friday night against UCLA. So to me, that was tremendous. This is the 3rd time she's faced Arizona. She's beaten Arizona 3 times. I think that was the first run she's given up against them in 3 starts. So this is not the first time Arizona has seen her. This is not the first time they've struggled against her. Does that get to your head at some point when you have faced a pitcher multiple times and they continue to have success over you? Did you see something mental there with Arizona? You mentioned some lack of adjusting to some of the deals. Could that be mental because they're like, man, we just can't hit this girl?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we saw it a little bit with all the hitters. I mean, even in the first game, you see it with OU. It's just over aggressive, right? When you're a team that you're an offensive team and that's how you got to win games, they're really trying to perform. They're trying to get it done. They're trying to get a lead for their pitcher. They got to run. Alabama got to run early. So they're trying to get it back immediately. So I feel like they were kind of pressing right from the beginning. And that's not the position that you want to be in the first game at the Women's College World Series. You know what I mean? So I just think that they were pressing a little bit just because of circumstance, right? They've had opportunities to see her. I think it was a lesson for them to kind of really settle down. Now, hey, we have a day off. We got to go back. We got to swing the bat like we know how, which we saw them do in the super regional and the regional before, where their offense, we're going to give up 3, but we're going to score 8. And that's kind of the way that they've been playing most of the year. So, it gives them a day. When you're an offensive-based team like this year, they seem to be more offensive than they are pitching. Sometimes you press, and I think that you saw some really good hitters trying to be the one instead of settling down in that moment.
No question about that. Jessie Harper hits her 92nd career home run, tied now for 2nd all-time in the history of college softball, tied for the most in Pac-12 history with MAGA. So Arizona, it's held by an out Wildcat. Your thoughts on her? And I thought she was fascinating in the press conference. She took that leadership of like, hey, we're going to play, with pride. I believe in us. We're going to make a run at this. That's the leadership you're looking for, right? In a situation like this where, hey, you lost a game now, you're facing elimination Saturday, but Jessie Harper is like not fazed by it. She's like, we're fine. We're going to be fine.
Yeah, it's interesting for me because I've gotten to coach a lot of these young ladies that are here on this stage on the junior national team. And now they're all grown up and they're in their super senior seasons and, being on this stage. And I was really impressed. I mean, I think that, I think she's made it pretty clear that she wants to go into coaching. So you sit there and you listen and it's like, hey, is that Jessie Harper? Or is that Coach Candrea? You know what I mean? So I was really impressed. I think that she's really taking her leadership role seriously. I think that this is really important for her. The hashtag for coach. I think that they're carrying a lot on their shoulders. Arizona is, no matter what, even though that, Alabama was probably, in a good situation, Arizona always has a target on its back, like she said. There's always a very, very high expectation once they get there. And I know that all of those girls love Coach very, very much. And it was another little piece to the puzzle, a little bit of added pressure. And, they want it so badly. And I think that they just need to really settle down, play the game the way that they know how. Good things will happen, if they can settle down a little bit.
I agree. There's been a lot of talk about that win for Coach and, the TV's trying to obviously building it up and all that stuff. It reminds me 2 years ago when they finally got back to the Women's College World Series for the first time since 2010. Is there such a thing? Can a player put too much pressure of, hey, let's win this for Coach? Like I felt like during that run when Arizona didn't get back to Oklahoma City, there was some pressing going on. Like, hey, we got to get back to the Women's College World Series. We're Arizona. We're supposed to be there. Can that be pressure that players sometimes pick up that maybe it's more harm than good? Like it's the intent is good, but that means you're maybe putting too much pressure on you when in reality is like just block that off and play your game, which is something that Coach Candrea has said, by the way. In fairness, you know her as well as anybody. He has said in these press conferences, while he appreciates that, it's not about him. It's about winning for the whole staff and the whole players in the program. It's not about him. And I think that's the message he's trying to tell his players.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one who's really kind of like, hey, I'm not commenting on this. This is, you know what I mean? Like, I'm enjoying the moment. I'm enjoying this team. I'm enjoying my staff. It's not him. I just think that they care about him so much. And I do think that it could be a little added something where they do press a little bit. I don't know for sure that's what's going on, but I do know that, when you're in those situations and there's a higher expectation, I think we saw it with OU and JMU. OU's there and it's like they're the number one seed and they're basically playing on their home fields and they got all the pieces, and then JMU is just I really felt they came out cool, calm, and collected because they have nothing to lose, you know what I mean? And they can just play their game, and they did. So I definitely think that, there's the double-edged sword when it comes to that, where it's like, hey, the expectation, and then you have even higher expectations of yourself. And then you're adding all these other pieces. I do think that can come into play.
Well, let's bring up that JMU Oklahoma game since you did. So you already know how this works already in broadcasting. You already know how to segue. That's obviously the big story of the day. This is one of the biggest stories in sports. I mean, JMU beating Oklahoma. Arguably it's the biggest upset in the history of the Women's College World Series. And I know some JMU fans don't like to hear that because it's, hey, we're really good. And that's not a knock on them. They're really good. Oh. But the bottom line, it's an unseeded team. It's only the second time ever in the Women's College World Series that an unseeded team has beaten the number one overall seed. Louisiana Lafayette beat Florida in 2008. And with respect to Florida, that was their first time in the Women's College World Series, not Oklahoma, who's been there a bunch of times. And I think the TV, ESPN, and the bottom line even said that JMU is one of the longest shot, things like that. What you mentioned what you saw there in that game. And Patty Gasso even mentioned that in the postgame. They weren't themselves. They didn't adjust like she thought they would. Odyssey Alexander, that rise ball, it seemed to me that gave him a lot of problems. Your thoughts there in that matchup? That was very fascinating. Do you think there was a lot of pressure on Oklahoma? Everybody's talked about the historic offense and they're the favorites. They're at Oklahoma City. And yet, I kind of agree with you. I thought JMU was the looser team. I thought Oklahoma was a little tight. When you blow out so many teams like they have, sometimes you forget what it's like to play in a tight game. And I think we saw a little bit of that. Your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of expectations going into this weekend. I think a lot of coaches that are here at the World Series have made lots of comments that have kind of put their teams and themselves into situations where, it's time to back it up and show what you're made of. And I didn't see it. I didn't see it in their eyes. They just seemed off. And I'm not saying they weren't prepared. They just seemed off, especially at the plate. They were swinging at pitches. Usually they really wait for the ball to come into the zone and then they attack. And I felt like they were swinging at a lot of pitches out of the zone that they don't normally do. They usually make pitchers work real hard to get them out. And I think that is what makes them so great. So, just swinging at pitches out of the zone. It just seemed uncharacteristic for them, making some defensive miscues early. I thought there were jitters there. It looked like there were jitters, and maybe they've got them out now and they can go back and go to work. But I really just, JMU, they looked pretty calm and collected, even when they gave up 3 runs and the game is tied, Odyssey, she's got a straight face, but I really appreciated in her post-game interview, they asked her about that. And she said, yeah, it was different. There were, you know what I mean? She didn't say butterflies, but it is. And I'll tell you from being out there, there are moments where, your gut is going and your heart is racing. And she admitted to it. But I think what you saw is her expressions and her outward appearance. She was able to control it in a way to stay in the moment. Every single player is going to have butterflies at some moment, some kind of pressure situation. I mean, just for an example, the Florida State second baseman, she gets the ground ball that she makes an error on, then the ground ball up the middle. Then the last out of the inning is a ground ball. Then she comes back up the next inning and she's up with a runner in scoring position to tie it up. You know what I mean? That's just how the game is. So in the World Series, you're going to have these moments where you're going to have the butterflies. You're going to feel the pressure. And it's really about controlling it and control. Sometimes it's fake it till you make it. And she admitted that on TV, like, yeah, it was different. I've never played on a stage like this before, but nobody would have have known it if she didn't say it. So I just thought that was really impressive because, I mean, I'm watching her and I'm like, man, she's stone cold, man. She's ready to go. But she owned up to it at the end and was like, yeah, this is a different stage, and you're gonna have those butterflies, and it's how you handle them and it's how you express yourself. And I thought she did a really great job.
Well, and I think that's a great art that I think young pitchers can learn from, is that, and I've learned this from pitchers I've talked to over the years, that when you're in the circle there, there's a facial expression you have to show that you're confident, you're in control of everything, even if you don't feel that way. You can't show that to the hitters because the hitters can sense that they're going to take advantage of that, right? And I thought, and it's a credit to JMU and their staff, Lauren Laporte and company, and their staff. They've done this, they've developed Jalen Ford, Megan Good, now Odyssey. They just know how to develop these pitchers that know how to pitch in big games. And this is a program that's been knocking on the door. They're not afraid of the moment. They beat Tennessee in the regionals, beat a good Liberty team, beat Missouri on the road. They're not fazed by this. They won at Michigan in the 2019 regionals. They've done this. They were a win away from the World Series in 2016. There's something to be said for that, and I think it's a credit to them. As someone who is coach right now at UNLV as a head coach, I want to ask you, how significant is this for the sport? Because you and I have talked about this. I've been on record. I thought you got the short end there. You should have been in the tournament in 2019, and there's a lot of great softball out there, not just in the big conferences. There's this Mountain West has good softball. The American has good softball. Colonial. I think this is huge for the sport that maybe those that didn't realize that now. Do you buy that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've been slowly but surely building to this moment. And when you can get a pitcher like Odyssey at a JMU, which, we're going to call a mid-major, but they got a lot of good things going for them. And you can get her to stay. That's the big thing, to stay and be loyal and stay in the program. I think that's huge because that allows you to develop and build a team around. I think that's one of the tough parts that we're seeing with the transfer portal. I mean, you're constantly listening throughout today, all of these teams that are here have all of these transfers. I mean, OU's 2 pitchers are transfers. Arizona's pitchers transfers.
How about Georgia? Georgia's facing their former players.
Exactly. So I mean, we got a dynamic in our sport, but I will say that it's one of those things. I mean, we even saw it in the regional. We saw it in the super regional. That those teams are going out there and they're competing and they're giving people a run for their money. And I was really impressed with that. I've really been impressed with how they've develop the team around. I think that the thing about JMU is that they have the pitcher, right? And that's the biggest piece. 1, they have the pitcher, and 2, they've been able to keep the pitcher. And that's really huge in this day and age of the transfer portal. So, I think hopefully that sends a message, because I know there's a lot of other good pitchers that are doing a great job, that if we can break down that barrier and get more of the mid-majors, the opportunities of those teams that are good, then those teams will be able to start building, because they will be able to develop that pitcher for more than a few years and build a team around it. And then we'll kind of see more and more teams and more opportunities where those teams can get to this point like JMU has. But it's few and far between, and it's pretty special for her to come in, be a stud as good as she has been, and to be there into her super senior year and carry this team into this moment. Hopefully that sends a message to some of these other pitchers. Stick it out. It's people are going to think of JMU and they're going to remember her name. And that's special. That's special. I mean, you think about Arizona, you think Jenny Finch. And we've had some really great other ones. Taryn's on staff, so she gets a little bit. But I mean, Alicia Hollowell, who I played with, won a national championship. But if you think about Arizona, Jenny Finch. Well, now when you think about JMU, I mean, she's got fans up and down. I mean, she's got professional players. She's got all of these people. So I think that this is just such a unique thing that I hope people can start buying into and noticing that, you can literally be one of those pitchers that puts a team on a map. You can be that player that puts a team on the map, and that's something that's unique and special.
You could build your own legend, your legacy. There's something to be said for that. And Mike Condrey has even said this in talking to him. There was, before Arizona, Arizona wasn't always Arizona. They had to start somewhere. And I think there's something to be said for that. Like you said, to have Odyssey Alexander is going to be remembered forever at JMU, no matter what happens the rest of the way. She will always be synonymous with JMU and the Women's College World Series. And I think there's a value. I think that's a great point you make. If you're a player now, don't just go to the quote unquote big program and, just be another great player. There's nothing wrong with it, but you can make your own legacy where you're at. And I think that this could break some barriers and hopefully wake up some of the committee members and pollsters as well that, hey, we should look outside of softball, the main power conferences when it comes to hosting with its rankings, seedings. Baseball does a better job, quite honestly,
Absolutely.
than softball does. And you know that following baseball as well. So hopefully this is a positive step in that direction. Oklahoma, where do they go from here? You were part of the 07 team. You lost in the winner's bracket game to Monica Habit in Tennessee, but you found a way to get back and win the national title that way. So it can be done. Florida State recently lost their first game on Thursday night, 2018, came back, won 6 in a row, won the national title. So clearly it can be done, but it's not easy. What's the key to doing that? And if you're Oklahoma, are you concerned about them, or do you think they're going to be okay here moving forward?
I think they're going to be okay. I mean, if you back at the game, they were right in it. And, I'm not going to say that, there were bad calls, but I will say that every single questionable call or thing that seemed to be close seemed to go JMU's way that game. And sometimes that just happens. So I really feel like if they can come back, get their feet under them, get some runs early, things like that, I think that they'll really kind of, they've lost some games here and there, and they've always been able to bounce back and then go on another really great streak. So, I think if they can get some runs early, really settle back in offensively, that they have the opportunity. I mean, their offense is built for it.
They've got the offense to do it, but people have questioned the pitching, right? Do they have enough dominant? Do they, they don't have that Kalani Ricketts or Paige Parker. Shannon Sale, had the one bad inning. She threw well, though.
She threw well. I mean, I saw two bad pitches, and they capitalized on both of them. She
right.
hung a change up, she hits it out, and then that girl that hit the home run and then the extra innings really walked. You know what I mean? So it was a 3-2 count. She had already walked. You go right at her. She takes advantage of the opportunity. So, I mean, you can't say – that's what I'm saying is I felt the pitching staffs across the board, all of the pitchers really performed well coming in off of, coming into that big stage, coming into all that pressure, really opening up. I thought the pitching staff did really well. So, I mean, I can't really even say that she didn't pitch well. She had 2 bad pitches, and they just happened to – they only had like 3 hits. So,
defense let her down because that 3-run inning, there was an error that kind of contributed. You mentioned the questionable call at first base, which Patty Gasso did not want to comment on. And I'm not going to put you on that spot. I'll address the umpiring later. But still, defense, though. I brought this up again. Your team has always been a very good defensive team. You're a defensive player. Defense kind of gets overlooked here, but it matters at this time of year. And Oklahoma made an error in that inning that helped JMU get that 3 runs in that inning. On the other side, JMU made some great defensive plays against Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the nerves come in. I think that's where you see the nerves the most. You know what I mean? You can hide them a little bit offensively because you can tip your hat to the pitcher a little bit. That's where you really kind of see the nerves and the defense. I thought the defense kind of all day, even at Oklahoma State, even though they got the win, like it was very uncharacteristic. I think that was just everybody today getting a game under their belt, having a little bit of nerves. Getting used to the field. I mean, they've had one practice on used to the field, getting used to the stage. You got the bigger grandstands now, the sun. There's a lot of pieces that go into it. And that's kind of where you see the nerves. So today I just, I think everybody's going to settle in a little bit better here. But yeah, defense is huge. When you get to this point, I mean, it's huge all year, but when your backs are against the wall and every run matters and, all of the pitchers are the elite of the elite, that defense, those miscues, it matters more.
So now Oklahoma will play Georgia in an elimination game on Saturday, while James Madison will face Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State beat Georgia 3-2. What stood out from that game for you? Oklahoma State had the lead early. Carrie Eberle gets the win, but Georgia had opportunities there to win that game late. Just didn't cash in there, had a couple runners on in the end of the 7th inning, but that was a tight game. Georgia's probably going to be thinking about some base running plays there. They wish they had back maybe, but that was a tight game. And Kenny Gajewski in Oklahoma State now in the winner's bracket game doesn't face Oklahoma. They'll face JMU, but they'll have the home crowd advantage at night on Friday night.
Yeah, I thought Eberle did a great job. we saw in the first game, like the rise ball pitchers. And I love that down ball, and then played defense behind her and really kind of taking away the opportunity for Georgia to hit home runs, right? They made every run that they got, they had to earn. It had to be multiple hits in a row, or the errors that Oklahoma State was making defensively for them to score. So I just really liked her approach. I liked her keeping the ball down. I liked her keeping the ball in the ballpark. I thought she threw with a lot of confidence. And defensively, I thought Oklahoma State kind of showed a little bit of nerves. I think that people are going to notice that and try to take advantage of it later on. I mean, I don't think that it was probably a secret about Everly not really wanting to throw overhand before they got here, but it was really highlighted today. So moving forward, there might be more buns at her. I think that's something that people are going to want to attack because she is so tough to hit. I really like what I saw from her on the mound. I think that the defense was kind of like, that was the nerves of today. I think that they'll settle in as they move forward.
You're right. I tend to agree. And describe, because you've been at the winner's bracket game, describe what it's going to be like Friday night. You got Oklahoma State, JMU, followed by Alabama, UCLA. All four teams know if they win that game, you're going to go to Sunday one win away from playing for the national championship series there. What is the mindset? What's it like playing in that winner's bracket game? Is there extra pressure because of that? Do you block all that off? What's it like to play in the winner's bracket game?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first game of the series is the most pressure.
Okay.
Really getting into the stage. I think that that's kind of where you're really feeling it the most. I expect to see them settle in a little bit as they head into tomorrow. They've gotten one under their belts. But I think that, JMU taking OU off guard, I think Oklahoma State's not going to let that happen. They're going to be ready to go. I think that they're going to have a good game plan. And then, if they go right back to their pitcher, I think that her keeping it down in the zone is really going to benefit them. JMU really, they won the game because they were able to hit a couple home runs. If you make them really piece it together, they didn't have a ton of hits. So, Everly's going to make them have to piece it together. They're going to have to get 3 or 4 hits in the same inning to be able to score. And that's different and it's tough. And she's shown that doesn't happen very often. So, I could see JMU really going to that short game, trying to sack bunt back at her, see, changing up a little bit to see to the team that they're going to play. So, I think that they're all going to settle in. I think being in that situation, I think playing the very next day is more beneficial than that day off into the loser's bracket. I think that is real tough when you have to really sit in kind of all the mistakes you made and sit in the fact that you weren't ready right off the bat and then try to bounce back a whole day later. I think that that's tougher than going straight into that winner's bracket game. And like you said, we've lost that second game of the winner's bracket and then had to bounce back and play a ton of games to get back to the championship. But then we were playing every day. So you were able to turn the page quickly. When you lose the first game on the first day, you got a whole day to sit in it. And I mean, you can do it, all the teams are giving the right answers. We're going to flush it. We're going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to get some BP in. They're saying the right things. But, it's a different thing to live it. And it's a different thing to live it when all 20 players are living it. So I think that's a little bit tougher. I'd rather, you want to play each day and kind of get the ball rolling, right? They got wins today and they're going into that keep it rolling and keep it going. So I like what I'm going to see tomorrow. I think that they're going to settle in a little bit.
That Alabama UCLA game, we're potentially getting Garcia Fouts. Holy smokes. That is going to be incredible atmosphere there. Could be, 2 national title contenders colliding there. And then on Saturday, Elimination Saturday, Oklahoma will play Georgia. Arizona is going to play Florida State. They played 3 times already this year. They played in Tallahassee. Florida State won 2 out of 3, low-scoring series. Let me start with Arizona, Florida State. The fact that they played each other 3 times, it's almost like you're playing a conference opponent here in the World Series. Is that a big deal, little deal here when you're playing here in a one game after, being familiar with playing an opponent?
Yeah, I mean, I do have some little inside information. They were playing at their place. I think it's going to be a little bit different here at this stage. I didn't get to watch the games, but from what I've heard, you know what I mean? Yeah, it was definitely a difficult series, but they were at their home. It's just interesting. And it's one of those funny things that it always seems to happen this way. But Arizona's playing Florida State, who they've already played and had losses to. And then you got OU playing Georgia, and OU hasn't lost barely any games this entire year. And Georgia happens to be one of those losses, So, I mean, it's just kind of one of those poetic things that you see when you get to this point in the season. And you can't even, we would have never been able to schedule this when we started at the beginning of the year. And
Right.
somehow it's just happened this way that, OU doesn't ever lose, but they happen to have a loss to Georgia, and that's who they're playing with their backs against the wall. And same thing with Arizona. We've already played them 3 times at their place, lost the series, and now here we are playing with our backs against the wall for the end of our season. I mean, it's just one of those things. So I think it's a benefit that they've both seen each other. So I as coaches, it's just very interesting, like what they're doing to prepare. What does practice tomorrow look like to prepare for this, elimination game when you do have all of that information? You're going back to your scouts, you're going back to the videos, and you're doing all that work. So I mean, tomorrow's a big day for those teams that are playing on that Sunday, and not even for the girls, right? We want their minds to be really, really relaxed. It's the coaches that are going into that grind mode of figuring out, hey, what do we got to do? What do we got to change? What adjustments do we need to make? And how are we going to do it at practice and help them without having them panic?
Yeah, no, I agree. You're right. Oklahoma and Georgia played in Athens twice, split the doubleheader. That was Oklahoma's first loss. So it's very fascinating there. What's the key mindset? You've done it, played an elimination Saturday. You're hoping, you want to play 2 games that day. You're hoping to play 4 games in the next 2 days. Is that what is that like from a mental standpoint? Is that easy? Because, as a softball player, you're used to playing doubleheaders. You're used to playing a lot of games, especially in travel ball now and things like that. Or is there a mental fatigue factor here? What's it like playing from the losers bracket, knowing that you got to win every game out or your season's over?
It's exhausting, but I think that we are always working on pitch to pitch, right? And you've heard so many players in their post-game interviews, the pitchers, the hitters, everyone's really just focused in the moment and trying to be focused on pitch to pitch. And I think that that's the mindset you have to have when your back is against the wall in those moments. So yes, it's exhausting, focus pitch to pitch, but at the same time, if you can get the ball rolling, you can really gain momentum. And I think that's what happened to us in 07. We lost, but we were able to gain momentum. Taryn was able to pitch a lot of pitches. She was so tired that she couldn't overthink. You know what I mean? She just had to let her body do. The coach called the pitch. She threw the pitch, change up. You know what I mean? You get to the point where you really have to trust all of your preparation, because you get exhausted, but it helps you not overthink, right? You go back to that pitch to pitch mentality, and then you can get the ball rolling and really gain some momentum as you kind of hit your stride. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a team that lost early be able to do that.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating, and it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. Do you like the format? Do you wish it would get tweaked? I know there's been some talk about that, articles written about that, about tweaking this, for more rest and, maybe stretching it out. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I mean, student-athlete welfare is huge, right? So definitely, I think it is pretty big aware. I think that our current format is forcing a lot of teams to have more than one pitcher, which I think is helping our sport. I think seeing more of these pitching staffs is helping our sport. I could go either way. I'm old school, and I like kind of, hey, you got to earn it, and you got to earn staying in the winners bracket. But I also know that student athlete welfare is really important. And, when we have those small travel rosters, it gets tough and it gets wearing. And, it's the one team, like we said, like, can you keep your pitcher healthy? Is she in shape? Have you protected her enough all season? Did she work hard in the weight room in the fall? There are so many pieces. And I think that these teams that we're watching have done a really good job of that. Of having their pitchers throw a lot of innings and yet protect them throughout the year, of getting them in the weight room, getting them stronger, getting their, fitness level to a point where they can go long stretches. I think we're going to see a lot of pitchers keep the ball the whole way through.
Should be fascinating. Of course, we're joined here by UNLV head coach Christy Fox, two-time national champion, 06-07 Arizona Sports Hall of Famer, two-time All-American, all-time leader, most hits in a Women's College World Series. What did you think of the stadium? We're going to have Victor join us here. He's at OKC, so he saw the renovations up close. But what from TV, what did you think of the new renovation, the new look, if you will, for the stadium there?
It's beautiful. I saw when they broke ground when I was with Team USA. And so for it to finally kind of be finished and for softball to be having that many fans and tomorrow and Saturday being sold out, I mean, the growth of our sport and just the investment that we're slowly but surely putting in, I think we're earning it. You know what I mean? You built it, we're filling it. And I look for that. I'm excited to see them continue to add to it and continue to make it improvements more in the locker rooms, showers, padded fence in the outfield. I think that, they're investing in our sport and we are putting a product out that is showing that, hey, people want to come and they want to watch that. And if you build this many seats, they're going to come and sit in them. And I just think that's awesome. And I'm really excited to see it full for the next 2 days and be sold out.
Yeah, that's going to be the big thing. It's going to be sold out and it's going to be tremendous. What last question before we let you go? And this has been awesome. We're going to try to bring you back for the championship series at some point there. But what's going to be the keys here? What do you want in the next few days for all the teams here, the winner's bracket game as well as in the elimination Saturday and into Sunday? What are the keys for these teams to be successful and get to that championship series?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the easy answer is the pitchers to continue to throw like they did today and hit their spots, defense to be clean, and then that timely hitting. That's the easy answer. I think that the more difficult answer is these teams need to stay true to themselves. What have they done to get themselves here? Don't deviate from all the success that you've already had. If you're an offensive team, you got to stick to what you're good at and keep fighting in that way. If you're a defensive pitching team that gets that key hit, don't try to deviate. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. And that goes player for player, right? You get in these moments and you kind of there's a little bit more pressure. You're on a big stage. You want to be the one. You want to be the big home run. But sometimes it's just that's not your job. Your job is to get a walk so the person behind you can get it. Or your job is to get the sack bunt down. Or, you might be the 9-hole and you just need to choke up and battle and hit a duck fart. There's just, you got to stay true to yourselves and stay true to, what got you to this moment and not try to be something that you're not and not try to be bigger than you are, right? I think that we saw a little bit of that today of just everybody wanting to be the one because the stage is so huge and this experience is so amazing. But we've just really staying focused and being true to your game plan, what got you there. And I think that the team that does that and kind of gets the momentum going, that's who we're going to see at the end.
No, that's going to be tremendous. Looking forward to it. Before we say goodbye to you, let's see. I'm going to bring in Victor here, see if he could say hello to Coach Fox. Vic, you just got back from the stadium. How you doing?
Doing very well. Obviously, I was worried I was going to lose my job with the great job Coach Fox was doing, breaking down what we saw tonight. I'm like, Eric, I'm going to let the Coach Fox take my spot tonight. I'm just going to take my siesta and say goodnight to everybody. But everything Coach Fox said was very accurate and very poignant. And I think what the biggest thing as well, and Eric, we'll talk about this later on, the teams that get the momentum early and ride that momentum towards the end, those are going to be the teams that get the victory. We saw that with James Madison when they jumped on Oklahoma early. It stunned Oklahoma. We saw that with UCLA when they got that infield single that led to eventually the game-winning run. Getting that momentum early in the game and giving yourself that upper edge against your opponent, those are going to be the teams that are going to end up being in the championship series on Monday.
Your thoughts on that, Coach? Pick that up on what Victor's saying there about early momentum. How big is that from a team standpoint to jump in and get off to a great start there and put the pressure on the other team?
Yeah, it's huge. And I think that, he named a couple of games, but even in the Arizona-Alabama game, right? Alabama gets a run early and, Fouts is pitching awesome and Arizona's kind of got their backs against the wall in the first inning, So I think that it's one of those things where coaches are going to think that way. And so we're going to see, which coach is going to sack bunt and kind of have that moment of, hey, we're going to try to get this one early. And then what coaches are really going to stick to, we're a home run hitting team and we're going to leave her on first and we're going to wait and see what happens. And I think that that's something that's going to be really exciting to just kind of see the identity of each team as we move forward, because you're right. That first run and that first, putting pressure on the other team, that's huge. And we saw it today.
Well, Victor, I do agree with you. Your job would be in jeopardy, except Coach Fox has a career. She has a coaching career. She's a family. She's a mom. So you're lucky that she has a life. But if she ever decides to give up coaching, she's got a seat here now, clearly.
Hey, I'll be happy to step aside.
Victor's more concerned about, is our Vegas offer still good or is that expired yet? You offered us to come up to Vegas when we first had you on the show.
Yes, absolutely. Come on down. And I know convention's out here this year too, so you guys better come up with that.
Oh, hey, make a note, Victor. We did not know that. All right, we'll talk later about that. But we're going to let you go. We know you got some stuff to take care of this weekend. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much for doing this. We'll try to see if maybe we bring you back on for the championship series. After all, of the three of us, you're the only one that knows what it's like to win a national title or two.
Yes.
So,
that sounds great. Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care. Head coach Christy Fox joining us here on In the Circle Live. Woo! She was phenomenal.
Yes.
Victor, that's a tough act. This might be the toughest act to follow you've ever had in your career, but she was phenomenal and made some great points. A two-time national champion, obviously knows what she's talking about. As Victor joins us, he's gotten back to the hotel, correct?
Yes, back at the hotel, safe and sound, back in the headquarters for the week.
So give us your perspective from being there in person. There's a lot of Oklahoma fans on the chat room right now, not happy. They're frustrated. Some are blaming you because after all, Victor, because as people listen to our podcast, knows things tend to happen when Victor's working and you're at the World Series working. And what's happened today in sports, ladies and gentlemen? We got, I believe, as I'm watching this now, let me check here. LeBron James is on the verge of being knocked out in the first round of the NBA playoffs for the first time in his career. The Lakers are down 17, 101-84 as we're recording this. Devin Booker almost outscored the Lakers in the first half. He had 33 in that first half. So that's all on your list. And yet, on a normal day, that would be the biggest story in sports. But in my opinion, the biggest story in sports is JMU knocking off Oklahoma, which is going to go down as the biggest upset in the Women's College World Series to date. You were there in person. Give us your thoughts. What was it like seeing it in person?
And I was talking to one of the writers on OU Insider about this. The key in that game, when Oklahoma hit that 3-run home run to tie things up, the Sooners got another runner on base. The fact that Alexander only limited the damage to that 3-run home run, that kind of let me know that we're going to have a game. Because, and we've seen this with Oklahoma. Once you get that first home run, those runs start coming in bunches. So for Alexander to keep it to just 3 and keep the game tied up until that Kate Gordon home run of the 8th inning, that is the underlining reason why JMU pulled off the upset against Oklahoma. That right there.
What was it like there when the final out was made? What was the buzz? You've covered so many sporting events in different sports. So you and I have covered many. We've seen shocking results and buzzer beaters and different reactions from the crowd. What was the crowd? Right. What was it like as that last out was made? Because for me, I'm just talking from watching. Even early in the Georgia-Oklahoma State game, even though it's mostly, Oklahoma State fans and Georgia fans, I sense a bit of a flat crowd early, more of like, wow, can you just believe what just happened? Deal. Even Scarborough and Kevin Brown in the broadcast, like, can you believe what just happened? What was it like in the press box and in the stadium there?
It was the same. I could echo those sentiments. It was exactly the same because there was still that aftertaste of what we saw with JMU. Because a lot of people, let's be perfectly honest, Eric, a lot of people who came to cover the World Series, watch Oklahoma JMU, thought it was going to be a fait accompli. Thought Oklahoma was going to steamroll JMU. They're going to take care of business. They're going to go into the winners bracket against Oklahoma State. And then we found out early on that JMU came to play. Yes, there were a couple of calls that did go against Oklahoma. There was a call I thought that went against James Madison in the fourth inning. But as we got deeper into the game, a lot of the fans started to realize, hey, this JMU team, they're the real deal. And then when Kate Gordon hit that home run, the place literally exploded who rooted for JMU. Because, and you know this, Eric, we've seen this in March Madness. When the team that is the lowest seed is pushing that top 2, top 3 seed, all the fans who are there for the next game end up cheering for that team. So a lot of Oklahoma State fans, some Georgia fans started cheering for James Madison. And when they got that final out to get the victory and get themselves to the winner's bracket game, well, technically it's 12:05 here, later on today, there was an explosion of celebration, mainly from the JMU side on the first base dugout, but some of the other fans around.
And I tweeted this during the game. I hope this puts to bed this nonsense about, well, it's unfair that the World Series is in Oklahoma City. And
okay, Eric, may I?
For sure. I'm going to get a drink of water while I let you have the platform.
I don't hear all you people when Nebraska was good complaining about the men's college World Series should be moving from Omaha. I didn't hear any of that then. And I never understand this. And there's always people who say, "Oh, let's grow this. We need to move it out of Oklahoma City because we want to grow the game." If you want to grow the game, how about having All-Americans from non-Power 5 conferences instead of having it from the same 12 and 15 select teams? How about actually having regionals that are balanced? How about that? Have that make sense? And I can't hear you. You're on mute. You had a great point, but you're on mute, brother.
There we go. I agree with you. Well, that's what I said. No wonder you couldn't hear me. I said I agree with you, which I rarely say, right?
Yes, exactly.
But I agree with you. And hopefully this will be a positive moving forward. That, there could be more James. And I thought Coach Fox made some great points about, in this transfer portal area, you don't need to leave to go to a bigger school to, you could stay where you're at, even if you're in a, quote, mid-major and make a name for your business. Odyssey Alexander is going to be synonymous with the Women's College World Series. Odyssey Alexander is going to be synonymous with JMU athletics, regardless of what happens moving forward.
You know what? You know who else could make the same case? 9 years ago, Sarah Nevins put USF on the map, taping them to the Women's College World Series.
Yeah, I agree on that. We'll see, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there. A lot of Oklahoma people talking right now is the bracket. So people have been talking about the bracket. You've discussed this. You're not a fan of the flipping of the bracket and all that. How concerned are you about Oklahoma's path right now? That's the question. They have the offense to make a run here. They wouldn't be the first team to come from the loser's bracket to get to the national championship series. But do you have questions and concerns here? Shannon Southall pitched well. The question I had is, could Oklahoma, though, win a game when their offense wasn't clicking? The answer today, at least, or however, depending when you listen to this, on Thursday, was no. How concerned are you now? They're going to play Georgia, try to win that game. Georgia beat them. They beat them in a shootout. They got to get through that game first, and then we'll see. Then that's where it really gets really wacky with the brackets. But where do you feel right now about Oklahoma tonight? Are you concerned? Do you think this is a shell shock? Is this one of those where they can't recover because of the shocking loss, or you think they'll be fine and bounce back? Where do you stand?
I think Oklahoma's going to be fine. I'm going to be intrigued with who Patty Gasso starts in that elimination game on Saturday versus Georgia. Does she go with G. Juarez, or does she go with a freshman Nicole May with her season on the line? I think she goes Juarez based on what she said in the press conference, saying that this is the best that Juarez had pitched in practice all season long. Maybe you give her the ball with your season on the line, or do you rely on the freshman Nicole May, who's starting game 1 in the Super Regional versus Washington? And they didn't see Nicole May that much in that doubleheader.
they're going to have to get good, and the good news is they got arms, but they're going to have. I don't think they're going to be able to outslug their way into the championship series. They're going to have to win a low-scoring game because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. You know this bracket better than I do. It gets a little confusing. People, even on our chat room, has been debating that back and forth. If I'm not mistaken, if Oklahoma were to get past Georgia, would they play the loser of Alabama UCLA on Saturday? Is that how that works?
Yes, I will confirm that.
Verify that.
But I know they may eventually have to play one of them, which means Rachel Garcia or Montana Fouts.
That's my point. And in the World Series, you're going to face great pitchers. And that's my concern for Oklahoma. I'm not saying they can't do it. They could do it. But it's going to be a challenge, to say the least. That's going to be the interesting thing there. Let me ask you this, because some people in the chat room have been debating. Did Oklahoma take JMU lightly? Did you sense anything that they took him lightly at all being there?
No. JMU was a better team today. They were the better team. They executed better. They got the more timely hits. Look, Shannon Sale, if you compare the numbers with her and Odyssey Alexander, you could say slight edge Alexander because of the strikeouts. Shannon Sale only gave up 3 hits. Granted, 2 of them were home runs.
Happens. But one of them, me and Coach Fox talked about it. That third inning, there was Do you want to get into it now? Want to get into it now? We're officially back to normal, Victor. We're in the World Series, and of course, we have umpiring's blowing calls. And look, JMU deserved to win the game, but Oklahoma, she was out. That should have been an out in that third inning. She was out. And we have 42 cameras covering
48 cameras according to Tom Canterbury. I'll have to confirm the tweet.
It's in the 40s.
Over 40 cameras.
It's in the 40s. But yet we don't have instant replay. Like, come on. We need to get instant replay. We got to get
at least in the postseason. Come on now.
Exactly. Patrick Murphy said, and we didn't get into this last night because we had so many other things we went into. Patrick Murphy said in his media availability that the SEC next season is going to have instant replay for conference regular season games. They were supposed to have it this year, but COVID pushed everything back. But I agree with you. If you want to argue that we can't do it in the regular season because not the facilities, whatever, okay, whatever. But the postseason, when every game now is televised, it's got to be in. And I'm sorry, but no disrespect. These umpires, we got to get better. And Mike Condrea, don't take my word for this. Let's go with the Hall of Famer, Mike Condrea. I asked Mike Condrea in his media availability in the Super Regionals about instant replay, which he's for, by the way. But you know what he also brought up? He said the pool of umpires needs to grow. It's not growing, in his opinion. He says that's the problem with the umpire right now, is that the pool is not growing. And as a result, you have maybe some umpires that shouldn't be umpiring that maybe stay too long. Some umpires are just not good, but they don't, nothing happens to them because you don't have other options. There needs to be a growth of umpiring here to get this better because it's not getting better. And they could have Kristie Cornwell on the broadcast talk all they want about they got the call right. Sorry, Kristie. No, they didn't. They didn't. The call at second base where she supposedly give me a break. You know how many times that happens? 100 times in a game. Come on.
Eric, the replay I saw, and you probably saw the same play, the contact happened opposite where she was making the throw.
Yes.
I could understand if she was interfering in the throwing lane.
Yeah.
I could understand that. But by the spirit of the rule, the Aloe should have stayed at first. There should have been a double play for interference.
Yeah, I agree. And we have technology to fix this. Please, let's just go and let's just stop pretending that the umpires are great. They're not, and it's not everybody. There's some good ones, but man, like that game, for the first good majority of that game, the umpires were way too much involved. And what's with this nonsense, by the way, of giving a warning to JMU after they hit the 3-run homer, to a warning because they got out of their dugout because they were celebrating? Meanwhile, Oklahoma is like pumping up the crowd like every time they get a timeout. What? Let the players, have some emotion. Let the players decide the game. Get out of the way, umpire. Seriously. What the hell was that? Joke. It's a joke.
The Angel Hernandez-ification of college softball. And by the way, Eric, to answer your bracket question, yes. If Oklahoma does beat Georgia on Saturday, they will play the loser of Alabama, UCLA, 6 o'clock p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. So they will have to beat both Mary Wilson Avon and either Rachel Garcia or Montana Fouts if they want to get to championship Sunday. They want to get to semifinal Sunday, excuse me.
Yeah.
And then have to win twice to get to the championship series.
That is not easy, Victor. They're going to have to pitch well. They're going to have to play better defense, as much as I'm crushing the umpiring because, well, why not? I will say this. There was an error in that third inning that also contributed to that 3-run inning. And I thought JMU was the better defensive team. And I think Oklahoma gave them some extra outs. And remember, we said this on our preview show Wednesday night. Extra outs, making mistakes. We talked to Plank about it. First games, some jitters. Do you give teams extra outs? We saw that with Arizona against Alabama. Gave them that first run on a mistake defensively. To me, defense gets overlooked. And I think that hurt Oklahoma here a little bit today. Some people, by the way, chat room asking, did Shannon Sale this year? They have taken her out in the 8th inning. I think that's hindsight stuff. She was fine. She got behind Gordon, but she came back. And the funny thing is, and Coach Fox brought it up, she should have walked. Like the umpire blew the call. That should have been a walk. It was a ball, not a strike. And it actually hurt Oklahoma. That's how it's hilarious that an umpire blowing the call actually helped JMU there. I mean, it's kind of hilarious. Kevin Brown even alluded to it. Who needs a walk? So it's fascinating there. But in fact, Patty Gasso in the postgame said no comment as far as the call at first base. So you can imagine what she was thinking. But they're gonna have the good news is they have arms, they have Sale, they got May. I'd have no problem. Sale was fine. If you would have asked anybody at Oklahoma fan prior to the game, hey, your pitcher would give up 4 runs in 8 innings, they would say, wait a minute, we're playing 8 innings? I think the bigger story is they only scored 3. And it's a credit to Odyssey Alexander. And I think Oklahoma offense pressed a little bit, Victor. And the thing I wondered, would they feel the pressure playing a JMU, an unseeded team, being at home, all the expectations with the offense? I think they felt they were a little tighter, I thought. Did you sense that?
A little bit, but it was not that noticeable. Maybe they pressed at the plate, especially after they got that home run to tie it up at 3. I talked about this, Eric, with Oklahoma. I compare Oklahoma to the Golden State Warriors, because once they get those first couple threes going, that they're gonna go on a run.
Yeah.
But they never got that to happen. Alexander kept them at bay. She kept her team even. And then again, the longer you stay tied with the team, the longer you stay nip it tough, it increases on the higher seed.
Yeah.
And Kate Gordon hit the home run of the 8th, and then next thing you know, JMU gets the Sooners down 1-2-3 in the bottom of the 8th, and here we are talking about the biggest upset of the Women's College World Series.
Kristen Johnson in the chat room saying, "Preach, Victor, preach."
Thank you, Chris.
Get
one of our loyal followers of our
Amen
podcast.
to that. Kelly Northern, big players step up in big games. Yeah, that's what this stage is about, right? That's what's so excited about this.
Prior to that home run,
yeah.
And keep in mind, before that home run, Kate Gordon was 0 for her last 14. She was hitless in the Supers against Mizzou,
right.
And JMU still made it to Oklahoma City in spite of that.
True. I agree with that. So JMU gets the win. Let me ask you about the stadium. Let's get into that first. You got to see it in person. You got to see give us an idea with the renovations from somebody that was there. What does it look like? It looks good on TV, but what does it look like in person?
It is it feels big time. It really feels like a legitimate big time athletic venue for college athletics. There's no bad seat in the house. wherever you sit, and the noise stays inside the stadium. Like for example, when Oklahoma tied it up with that 3-run home run, you could really hear that crowd from Oklahoma explode when that home run was hit to tie things up. You can hear the emotion because before they installed the second deck, you hear the noise and the noise would just go up. Now it kind of just stays concentrated inside the stadium, so it feels more intimate when there's a big moment, when there's a big play, and it comes off very well on television. Like we had the TVs in the media room, which are on delay, but it really comes off well both in television and when you're there in real time.
That's good to hear. No, that's good to hear. How's the press box?
Press box was awesome.
Food?
It was good as usual. By the way, Eric. By the way, for those of you who are following us, Eric is always very particular about a press box and the food that they do serve.
I'm taking notes for next year. That's why I'm getting a head start here. All right, that's kind of important. So now let's go Oklahoma State, Georgia. That was a pretty good game, kind of under the radar because of what happened with the OU game, right? But Georgia that was a pretty good back and forth game. Your thoughts on that game?
Well, Georgia had some chances. They had a couple base running issues in the middle of the game that cost them a run. That eventually I felt, cost them the game. Eberly was sharp, but wasn't as dominant as we've seen her in the past few weeks. Coach Fox brought up some very interesting tidbits from her. I wouldn't be surprised if James Madison maybe tries to use more of the small game against Eberly tomorrow night in our winners bracket game at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central. Hey, Mary Wilson Avent, kind of like Shannon Sale. She pitched well, made one mistake to try and factor with a 2-run home run, and that ended up being the difference in that game.
What do you think is going through Oklahoma State's mind? I'm very fascinated by this tomorrow night against JMU. I think there's some Oklahoma State fans who are expecting bedlam, right? Which, I mean, I don't know. You're in town, right? I'm sure everybody in that town was expecting bedlam on Friday night. We're not getting bedlam. Do you think that – I'm really intrigued by how Oklahoma State comes out tomorrow night. Because I'm really intrigued now because they're going to be the favorites. All the pressure's on them now, not JMU. This is a huge opportunity for that program and Coach Gajewski here. They win that game, they're a win away from playing for the national championship. I'm fascinated to see how they come out against Odyssey, Alexander, and JMU. Don't you? Because they were probably thinking, man, we're going to have to go through Oklahoma again, which I think they were targeting that. But now you're not getting Oklahoma. They may not get Oklahoma, period, depending on how things play out. I'm fascinated to see what the crowd will be like. Holly Rose said on TV it's going to be a sellout. So that suggests to me there's going to be a lot of Cowgirl fans, right? You were there 2 years ago, right, when they played at night. A lot of Oklahoma. Yes. I mean, give me the fan from the 4 games today. Give me a breakdown of the fans percentages. How many of the fans there are all the games? Who had the biggest fan turnouts and things like that?
Naturally, Oklahoma had the biggest turnout. Yep. JMU had a very solid contingent. I was really surprised and pleased with that. And then you had the social with Oklahoma State, and of course, the Bruins in Florida State. They're going to have their fans as well. Georgia had a nice turn. It was a very nice turnout for all of the fan bases. And I'm going to be intrigued to see what happens on Friday night. How many Cowgirl fans are there now that Oklahoma is out of the winners bracket? And I think here's another thing, Eric. If you're Oklahoma State, you saw what happened to Oklahoma. You saw how close you were to nearly losing today. Expect Oklahoma State to play their best game of the year tomorrow night, understanding they don't want to have what happened to Oklahoma happen to them, and understanding that if they get that win, they get Saturday off, and they're 1 win away from playing for a national title.
We expect Eberly get the ball?
Yes.
Eberly, yes. I get the Odyssey. I agree on that. Alabama, Arizona, Montana, Fouts. 16 strikeouts. One of 5 pitchers that has had at least 16 strikeouts or more in a 7-inning game Kat Osterman, Monica Abbott, Tara Novello, I believe Kalani Ricketts. I mean, the other names. What was it like to see that performance in person with Jenny Finch in the house? Who, as we found out on the telecast, I don't know if the people in the press box were aware of this, but we found out on the broadcast, Jenny Finch is one of Fowler's idols. She looks up to Jenny Finch, and here she is throwing a game of her life against Jenny Finch's alma mater with Jenny Finch in the building. And Holly Rowe told Fowler about that, and she
Fouts.
She told Fouts. What am I saying? It's late. It's 1:30.
Fowler.
Now, I'll tell you, I have a much more appreciation now for the Seth Meyers of the world and Jimmy Fallon's for doing late night shows. Even though they're taped, we're not. See, we're live. But still, it's late night. Maybe that's our new show, late night within the circle. It could be the new trend, especially if I might do this for the Olympics. Or that could be good morning. But
you will do that for the Olympics. I will be sleeping.
Montana Fouts, 16 strikeouts with her idol Jenny Finch in attendance. She smiled when Holly brought it up. She got really excited about this. She had no idea. But what a performance. Even Mike Cadrea said, look, this game was all about Montana Fouts. Your thoughts?
When she picked up that 7 to 8 strikeout to end that third inning, I remember looking up to one of my colleagues at the press box and said, we're witnessing something special tonight. That's how dominant and how locked in she was. And that was the reason, Eric, I thought Alabama was going to win the national championship, because I thought Montana Fouts would have performances. I didn't think she would have performances like this, because she has the kind of stuff that she could have performances like this on a routine basis. And the Arizona lineup is we all know it, it's potent. The opponent, the lineup, they're powerful. They have speed. They have power. I'm surprised, Eric, late in the game that Arizona didn't put more emphasis on putting the ball in play. That a lot of their slappers had some success on Fouts, except saying to that home run.
Mike Contreras said in the postgame they just didn't adjust quickly enough.
Yeah.
But as he said, it's easier said than done when you're facing a pitcher that's throwing 70 to 72 consistent.
Yeah, and by the way, give credit to Stephanie Van Brocco, Alabama pitching. Yeah, thank you, Stephanie Van Brocco Prothro. By the way, we need to start giving her some credit. If you look at the track record of aces that she's developed in Alabama, Kelsey Dunn, Jacqueline Trainer, Montana Fouts. We can go on and on and on. We need to start giving her flowers as one of the top pitching coaches in the sport, because she had a tremendous game plan for Arizona tonight. And by the way, Patrick, what is it about the Women's College World Series where Patrick Murphy gets a pinch hitter and the pinch hitter goes yard and he looks like an absolute genius?
He's pretty good at what he does, isn't he? It's a good gig. Yeah. Let's say give credit to one of our viewers on Wednesday night who posted the fact Montana Fouts has owned Arizona. And that continued. We wondered if that meant something. Didn't. It mattered. It mattered, and she was dominant. And she will face now UCLA and Rachel Garcia, who also was, oh, by the way, just decided to throw a 5-hit shutout, her second consecutive shutout, as UCLA beats Florida State 4-0 here, Victor. And we set up a mega matchup. The matchup that you and I picked before the year for the national championship. Alabama, UCLA. And there's a part of me that thinks we still might be right, but the championship game might be this Friday night. This is a huge game. I'm expecting Fouts versus Garcia. In my opinion, the winner of this game becomes the favorite to win the national title.
Yep. And yeah, you're absolutely right. And I feel both teams are peaking right now. With UCLA, after losing that first game versus Virginia Tech, they battled back, and then Garcia, that offense come through late. And Alabama, what more can you say? Montana Fouts does work in a circle. You get some runs early. That's been the formula for Alabama in this postseason. Score early in the game, let Montana Fouts ride you to the finish line, and Alabama ends up, as they say, pulling up the W. So between the W's. So
this is a heavyweight fight right here. I mean, I mean, I remember Florida UCLA 18 was a classic game. That was the infamous Tim Walton got tossed. I'll never forget. I was outside in the press box because and I can hear Tim Walton throwing his clipboard on the field and yelling stuff we won't say here.
Yes, even though it's a live show, we will not repeat the things that he said.
And I was like, whoa! And I've seen Tim get ejected way too many times, for the record. I've seen a lot. I've seen Triple H win the WWE title like 3 times in person. I've seen Tim Walton get ejected 3 times in person. I don't know what that is. But that was tremendous. And you got to see Bedlam 2 years ago, right? That was the and that was the winner's bracket game. And then what was the other winner's bracket game that year? Was it Washington, Oregon, I want to say?
Washington, Oklahoma State, I believe.
Thank you. Or Oklahoma State was Bedlam.
No, you're right.
It was and then Washington was playing the other one, Arizona, maybe? No, that was the early game. That was a Thursday. Thank you.
UCLA.
Something like that. Anyway, this is another classic here, and I'm really looking forward to this title fight here in a lot of ways. The best team in the Pac-12 against the best team in the SEC, right? There's a lot of chit-chatting from both fan bases in the conferences.
Here we go.
Everywhere.
Here we go.
Here. Can't wait for this. And as I don't know if you're aware, but they announced it, obviously, thankfully, because the Hawks eliminated the Knicks, to Stephen A. Smith's dismay, because the Jazz took care of the Grizzlies, and because the Sixers took care of the Wizards, there's only one NBA playoff game on Friday night, the Mavs and the Clippers. Go figure that series out, where the home team can't win. So they're on ESPN, but the Women's College World Series, which was originally going to be on ESPNU because we thought there were going to be a lot of NBA playoff games, will now be on ESPN2. That's a big plus. Big plus.
Huge. I'll be intrigued to see what those numbers are going to be when they come out early next week for this Friday night on ESPN2 instead of ESPNU.
I'm looking forward to seeing what the ratings are for this game today, especially that JMU-Oklahoma game. Boy, I felt like on social media everybody was watching that game. Everybody got caught up in that. A lot of people got caught up. Like Jimmy Trano's a media guy. Sports Illustrated was into it. Like a lot of athletes were into it. It was very fascinating, which is great. It's great for the sport. I think people understand why this is such an exciting sport there, to say the least. So Alabama, UCLA is big. JMU, Oklahoma State. And then you got the elimination Saturday, where you got a couple of rematches. Georgia against Oklahoma and Arizona against Florida State. They played a 3-game series in Tallahassee earlier this year. The Noles won 2 out of 3. It was a very low-scoring series. And then Oklahoma, Georgia split in Athens. Georgia was the first team this year to beat Oklahoma. Then Oklahoma run-rolled them the second time around. So, elimination Saturday is always a never disappoints, to say the least. What are you looking forward to seeing the most on Saturday? As Victor's frozen. He is frozen. I have frozen him to the point where he's speechless over his comments here. So we'll hopefully get Vic back in here, and then we'll kind of wrap up the show here as we have his final thoughts. But, we'll see what happens. Other comments here. Las Vegas has not released the favorites for Friday's games yet from what I see. I saw where ESPN on the bottom line had James Madison was like a 50-1. 50-1 to win the World Series. I'm glad there's odds, by the way, for softball. I've always been clamoring for that. Every other sport has it. Georgia, Oklahoma State was competitive, but at no point did anyone think that Georgia was going to win. I don't even care about OU sports, but OU softball has my heart till tomorrow. Jumping on the bed. I don't know about that. I thought Georgia had some chances. I wouldn't say they didn't have a shot. I mean, they had chances to win there late there. It's Vic now joining us back there. You got frozen there. When I asked you about elimination Saturday, you eliminated yourself there.
I don't know. Give a precursor of what's going to be happening to some teams after Saturday evening in Oklahoma City, but it's gonna. Gonna be high noon, and then you got Arizona, Florida State at 2:30. And what Coach Fox mentioned about both teams playing each other already. That's a unique dynamic that we've had, because usually when we're in elimination Saturday, we have matchups of teams that haven't seen each other in the regular season. So that's going to be a chess match in terms of who's going to start, What tweaks do you see? What adjustments are the teams going to be making? With this being the third time Oklahoma plays Georgia and the fourth time Arizona plays Florida State, and the stakes being as high as they are, if you lose, your season is over.
I can't wait for it. It's going to be exciting and suspenseful, and what a heck of a day one to start it off. What a day one to certainly remember, and what a day in sports, Vic. What a day in sports on a day where history was made in multiple sports. LeBron James eliminated in a first round of the NBA playoffs for the first time in his career. The same day that number one Oklahoma goes down to JMU. We got a question from Jacob. By the way, props to all our viewers still tuning in here at 1:35 a.m. Eastern time. I feel we have reached the Bob Costas later segment, a portion of the show here. Bob Costas used to have a 1:30 a.m. show on NBC. Carson Daly after that. I don't know who has a 1:30 a.m. show anymore on NBC. I don't watch 1:30 TV programming much anymore. But here we are. This is right up there with some of our selection shows recordings where we've been up this late. Of course, Vic has an hour advantage on me. He's smiling. It's only 12:30. The night's just starting for him. But Jacob has a question.
Yes.
More important to win on Friday, Bama or UCLA? UCLA having to ride Garcia makes coming out of the losers bracket a harder one. Bama at least has a serviceable Kilfoy, number 2. Let's bring this up because you brought this up. Credit to you on this. You brought this up on Wednesday night. A lot of people were not aware of this, but Megan Faramo not with the team. UCLA came out with a statement to 7 innings. They did a preview show on Wednesday night with our friends Courtney Lyle and Jenny Dalton-Hill and Caleb Bro. And they mentioned that Faramo wasn't with the team. She has an injured hand. She's seen a specialist in Southern California, and she's day-to-day. That doesn't sound promising.
Wrong day-to-day.
Yeah. It's an interesting argument for Jacob, and I kind of agree with Jacob because I saw UCLA in 2018 when they depended on Garcia. And you remember what happened, Victor? Once they lost that game on Sunday, that Florida State came from behind to beat them. Mason with the big home run game. UCLA ran out of gas. They didn't have an answer. And Florida State crushed them the second game. I actually agree with Jacob. If with Faramo out, and I'm assuming she's out, I mean, they could say that she'll fly in on the week. Maybe she'll fly in on the weekend. But even if she does, that's tough. I actually agree. I think, Jacob, I agree with you. I think it's a bigger game for UCLA because I think Kilfoy can win games. She's good. Granted, inexperienced. Now, UCLA fan might argue, wait a minute, Acevedo we have as well. So maybe they throw her. I mean, look, it's a big game for both. But I tend to agree that Alabama is more likely to win 2 games in a day than, say, UCLA, although it's hard to question a defending national champion, right? And if anybody's going to win 2 games in a row with one arm, it is Rachel Garcia.
Garcia, because she can win it with her arm and her bat.
And here's the other factor. Let me ask you this, Victor, and Kelly brings up a great point. The loser of this game is going to face probably, assuming Oklahoma gets past Georgia, the loser of this Alabama-UCLA game has to face Oklahoma in an elimination game on Saturday. Holy smokes.
We talked about the Oklahoma side of things, having to face the loser of that game. We don't talk about what the loser of this game has to do with presuming Oklahoma advances.
That is whew. So I think Kelly, you know what, Kelly, you've won me over on that. That's a great point. I think it's critical to win. Forget the depth of your pitching. You want to avoid, I mean, no disrespect to Georgia. Look, Georgia could knock off Oklahoma and, whatever. But the possibility that you're going to have to your season is on the line against Oklahoma that's at night, right? That would be a night game.
7 o'clock.
I mean, you could have a national title game as an elimination game on Saturday night. That might be one of the biggest elimination games in the history of the Women's College World Series.
Mm-hmm. It would. It absolutely would.
Like you could have 1 versus 2 in theory in an elimination game. I don't know how
Yeah.
often that's a Graham Hayes question there, or Karen Johns over there at ESPN. Has that ever happened? Have we had a 1-versus-2 elimination game? If that happened, or a 1-versus-3? If that happens, I'm sure it's had to have happened at some point, I would think, but you never know. But I think Kelly's point is well taken. I think it's a must win for both sides just to avoid that. You know how you avoid that? You win on Friday, right? Because if you
win on Friday, because if you win on Friday, you don't have to play until Sunday at the earliest at 1:00.
Right, and somebody has to beat you twice.
Yes.
Um,
you want to be as my Twitter handle. You want to be in the catbird seat.
Oh, bada boom, boom. There you go.
Thank you.
Jacob says we could get 2 championship series quality matchups before the championship series: UCLA versus Bama, and then Oklahoma UCLA. Yeah. I mean, and I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't want to sound knee-jerk reaction because you're just reacting to the moment. But I mean, in 2018, Oklahoma Florida was a big deal in that in that elimination game.
It was.
Washington Oklahoma was. I mean, so you always get some quality, but that is some heavyweight stuff there. Because those are the 3 favorites. We said this on Go Figure. We said this on Wednesday. Those are the 3 favorites going in, and yet.
And Eric, you have a possibility that by Saturday night, as a matter of fact, there is a good possibility that 2 of those 3 could be eliminated by Saturday night when we go on live on our YouTube page. That possibility is out there.
And the concern, and again, it goes back to what we've talked about Oklahoma's pitching. If Oklahoma is to get past Georgia, which will not be easy, but let's say they do. You said it, Victor. They're going to likely see Garcia or Fouts. Can Oklahoma win? You cannot expect Oklahoma to score a bunch of runs against either of those pitchers. Can Oklahoma win a 2-0, 2-1 game? This is a fascinating situation here. And I think the other fascinating thing about this, there's a very good possibility we're going to have a newbie in the championship series, a team that hasn't played for a national title, whether it be JMU or possibly Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
that's a big game for both of those teams. It's a huge game.
I can make the argument that this Friday night's winners bracket game is the most important winners bracket games in the last decade, simply because of what you would get to avoid on Saturday, and what will be in front of you if you win and you get the day off and play on Sunday.
And it could be historic. If JMU beats Oklahoma State, JMU's 1 win away from playing for the national championship in the championship series by beating the Oklahoma schools in Oklahoma City.
Would that make them the state champions?
I don't know, but does that now make them Gonzaga? Does that make them Boise State? What, football or Gonzaga of basketball? I don't know what. It makes them something. By the way, as I tweeted this out, pretty good week for the state of Virginia. Virginia Wesleyan wins the national title in D3, and JMU beats Oklahoma. Virginia's a pretty good state right now in softball.
Pretty good state. All
right. Let's talk about you. You've got a busy Friday. We both have busy Fridays. I have a scheduled interview that I will announce on tomorrow night's show. Is it tomorrow night? Maybe later tonight?
Later on our show for recapping Friday night's action.
Reminder, everybody, we're going to be back live every night, no matter what time. Tonight we were on at 12:05 a.m. Eastern. Who knows what time we'll be on tomorrow night, but we'll be on. And we'll be joined by Miami of Ohio's head coach Karen Kumar is scheduled to join us. Victor will be back with us. We might get Justin on board, assuming Justin hasn't passed out by that point. But so I have an interview that I'll be recording tomorrow. Hopefully, if that goes to plan, we'll announce that on tomorrow night's show, because that interview that I'm recording will be our guest on the Monday podcast. I'm not, so.
We will not speak of it until we have it done.
So we will, but you're busy yourself, because prior to the 2 winners bracket games, that's not the only 2 softball games you're attending on Friday, is it?
No, Team USA will be taking on the USSSA Pride at high noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central at Hall of Fame Stadium, and yours truly will be covering that. So I'll share my thoughts with that on our episode, our next live episode, because I don't want to get my days confused like you. So we're going to talk about that. Samantha Shaw playing back in the state of Oklahoma for the Pride. Haley Cruz, who recently signed with the Pride, picked up a base hit in her debut in the game in Stillwater on Wednesday. So I will get to looking forward to seeing that and seeing how Team USA performs against the Pride as they start to ramp up before the Tokyo Olympics that take place in 48 days.
Yeah, and you're going to give us a report about that, how they looked on our show on Friday night or / Saturday morning show.
Whatever time we go on the air.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be really fascinating to see this year. People saying JMU is good, but if OU makes it to Sunday, they are done. Well, first of all, let's see if they get to Sunday. I don't know.
Okay, you can't get to Sunday if you got to get to Saturday first before you can get to Sunday. And in order to get to Saturday, you have to beat Georgia. And that's no guarantee.
And then who knows from there? So that's going to be a very, very, very busy deal. Man, that's going to be wild. Yes. Really, really wild. So USA, you got USA. That's going to be fascinating, facing the Pride. A lot of alums there, by the way. A lot of Pride players in tonight's game. Jesse Warren was there. I believe Alex Powers was there. Megan King, by the way.
Alex Powers was there. Yes.
I was happy to see, and you posted this, our friend Kenzie Fowler is in Oklahoma City.
She is in Oklahoma City, yes. I will hopefully I will get a chance to chat to her in person on Saturday.
Oh, wow. You get to meet. Yeah, that's right. Jenny Finch was there. Who else was there? Give us a kind of a celebrity look, because you probably saw more people than we did on TV.
Well, Lauren Chamberlain was there. Of course, Lauren Chamberlain was there. Tori Tyson, Howard head coach, was there. Megan Good was actually there as well. No surprise, wearing her number for the Dukes and her alma mater. So, yeah, it was a lot of dignitaries there. Jamie Lopez was there as well. You said Francesca Anea was there as well. I didn't get.
So she's working in the truck.
Oh, she's working. Yes. So I probably won't.
So my the three analysts I worked with this year are all in Oklahoma City, except me.
Go figure. Well, I am an extension of you, if you think about it.
You're living a good life. I will say that. Media-wise, any celeb medias? I know my friend Andrea Adelson's there. I heard her on the press conference early. I would assume she's covering it for ESPN. But it's cool to see. I'm actually mad at her. Next time I'm going to see her, I'm like, you could have just, if you wanted to go to see the World Series, you should have told me. Like, I could have, meet up with you. The one time she goes, her first time in Oklahoma. That's cool that she was there. Who else was there?
Of course, you had a legendary Barry Trammell for the Oklahoma, Jenny Carlson, who we had on the episode on one of our past episodes about an article she wrote. She was there as well. In terms of like,
did you get to say hello to her?
Didn't get a chance to say hello to her. Hopefully, I'll get to do that.
How is the whole press box situation? Is there protocols? What's it like in there?
There's no there are some of our people are wearing masks and people have sanitizers.
That's good.
So. Yeah, so no, I was wearing my mask a little bit. So
obviously, I haven't been there since 18, so there's no more outside press box like before, correct? Is everything inside? But the windows are open. Is that correct?
Yes, they do have windows open. Yes.
Air conditioned.
Yes.
You like it?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. That's good. That's good. Who else did I see they showed on TV that was there? Yeah, I think that's a pretty good list. And like I said, I expect more people to be there as well. Good question here by Jacob. Which would shock you more? JMU getting to the championship series or OU going 0-2 at the Women's College World Series with their historic offense? That's a great question. That is it. Wow. Somebody send that to PTI's producer so finally they can actually put up a nice toss-up. Yeah,
so that a robot can't push.
Yeah, exactly. And, instead of them, yapping about, the Lakers' failures or whatever. That's a great question. What do you think, right? Like, that, they're both equally shocking. I think, wow, that's a fascinating question.
I would lean more towards OU going 0-2 simply because they only lost 2 games going into the postseason. That would be the more shocking thing to me. Oh, you going 0-2.
The counter I'll make to that, I'll take the other side of this. Great teams have gone to Oklahoma City and gone 0-2. But to have a team from the Colonial Conference playing for the national title, and I got to look this up. Have we ever had an unseeded team play for the national championship?
Well, let's think. Seeding began in 2005.
Yeah.
I know DePaul was the first in 2005. Did LSU make the champ? No, LSU didn't make the champ series in 12. That was them in USF.
Right.
I know Louisiana didn't make it in 2008 when they were unseeded, even though they docked up. That would be the first. That would be the first time.
To me, that would be more shocking. Kelly disagrees. Kelly says, I wouldn't say that, Vic, because of the story of the week's schedule. Interesting.
Well,
interesting. Okay, Kelly, are you talking about the week schedule from what? JMU's lack of non-conference because they were limited? Are you talking about Oklahoma's not?
Yes.
I think because I there's two ways there, right? Like, you know what's going to happen here. If Oklahoma gets eliminated on Saturday at some point,
people are gonna blame it on their weak non-conference schedule.
People are going to say, you see, they weren't pushed, blah, and I don't really buy all that. But I think that narrative will be there. So I don't know. That's an interesting deal. But I would say for James Madison, I mean, to get to the – all right, Kelly talks about the Oklahoma.
Okay.
So her argument, I do think JMU would be the bigger story because an unseeded team to play for the national championship, let alone a team that is not in any, as I like to say, the mainstream five, is just significant. I think that's a bigger story. Like I said, there's been great teams that have been to Oklahoma City that have gone 0-2. I'm pretty sure there's been one seeds that have been 0-2. I understand the historical perspective from Oklahoma, but I think JMU is the bigger story if they get to the championship series. That's kind of like Butler playing for the national title in college basketball, right? Mm-hmm. That's coastal Carolina. Or Fresno State in 2008. Maybe a better example because they were a 4 seed in a regional and they were unseeded and they won the College World Series beating a very good Georgia team in Omaha. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll have to break that down. If JMU wins against Oklahoma State, and I listen, they could do it. Let's not act like that's not that's possible. The way Odyssey Alexander is throwing right now.
James Madison, the moment they punched their ticket to Oklahoma City, were playing with house money. And they just beat the house in the opening game of the tournament. So,
the thing is they played with poise, they played with confidence, and I thought that was, it just tells you how well coached they are.
Yes.
To me, that's good. I see now. I don't agree. Well, they got lucky. Everybody gets lucky when you get this deep. You have to have some luck at some point because these teams are very good. And the ball when the thing bounces your way, you got to take advantage of it.
You have to.
That's a fun storyline, but we'll see. That's going to be an interesting winners bracket Friday to see. If JMU can beat Oklahoma State, we'll have to seriously make that big conversation. And I'm going to say this too, Victor. See if you agree with me on this. If JMU were to get to the championship series, I think there's more media attention to the championship series than it would be if it was Alabama, Oklahoma. I think there would be a lot of media people that don't normally cover softball that would cover that angle. People always like to cover that little Cinderella story. You see that all the time when a George Mason or somebody like that makes the Final Four. That might get a lot of leads in sports shows and things like that, don't you?
I think so. I really think so. And it's already picking up steam. It was already picking up steam before the Women's College World Series.
Yeah. It's very fascinating. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves on that.
Yes, way ahead of ourselves.
Okay, a couple more notes before we sign off here because, it's almost 2 a.m. in my area. So, and congratulations officially to Beth Mowins, NBC announcing she will be the voice of Olympic softball. That was announced. NBC announced their broadcasters for a lot of their sports. Courtney Lyle will also be part of the Olympic coverage. She's calling field hockey, I believe.
Yes, Field hockey, that is correct.
So congrats to both, but very fitting. I think that's a positive step for softball. You know, in years past in the Olympics, they would just use kind of the random broadcaster. I think Matt Vasgersian may have even called the Athens Olympics. I could be wrong on that. My point is you didn't have a, quote, traditional softball broadcaster calling the softball Olympics. Well, now you do with the GOAT when it comes to broadcasting softball. I think what a great move there to have her call the Olympics. I would assume this has not been official at all, but I'm assuming she'll be paired with Michelle Smith. It would make the most sense, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
Okay. So congrats to her on that. Congrats to Courtney Lyle, who's hosting, obviously, the studio coverage. She'll be part of the Olympic coverage as well, calling field hockey. So Jason Benetti will be calling baseball. So really good stuff from NBC here. Good stuff.
Yes.
And I would assume the majority of those broadcasters will do it on remote, and maybe the positive is that you can get a Jason Benetti, you could get a Beth Mounts, or maybe you could not if you had to travel. Who knows? But that's a long ways away. But I wanted to mention that with the Olympics, hopefully in about 50-some days. Big news there. And then Victor's going to see Team USA tomorrow or later today against the Pride, and then the winners bracket games. All right, Victor, last thoughts. You're in Oklahoma City. Give me your last thoughts here before we call it a night or morning.
He or she who scores first will win the game. All 4 games were won by the team that scored first. James Madison, Oklahoma State, Alabama, UCLA. If you score first, you're going to win. Keep that in the back of your mind watching these winners bracket games later on today.
No question. Thanks to all of you that have tuned in live, especially those of you who stayed up with us. We're going to do this every night. Get the caffeine ready, you know. We're going to do this every night. We're the only show that's on live talking softball after the games. Nobody else is doing it. We're originals. I'm sure next year or 2 years somebody else will do it because that's how this trend goes. We start trends and others follow. And that's okay because we help grow. That's what we do here. That's what we hear. Thanks to Christy Fox, who was phenomenal. Holy smokes. I mean, she was incredible. Great analysis. We'll try to bring her back for the championship series next week. She was fantastic. We'll have her on. Thanks to her for taking the time. We got some other guests coming up. Every show will have a different guest analyst joining us. Victor will be kind of coming back. He'll be offering. We'll get Justin McLeod on at some point this weekend. We got some other names we'll talk about as well throughout the weeks as well. So make sure you subscribe. And I've seen about a huge turnout in our subscriptions on YouTube. Keep that number going up. It has exploded. Check out we have all the post-game press conferences. I will upload UCLA and Florida State after we go off the air. And yes, we are trying to get Aaron Miller. Thank you. Yes, send your request. Who do you want on the show? Trust me, Aaron Miller is on our top of our list. We we asked Chris Plank if we could get Aaron Miller at some point. He's a busy guy. He's on the air for the rest of the week, literally. But we are going to try to get Aaron Miller at some point. Trust me on that. But we got some other guests as well lined up. We will announce who our Monday podcast is, hopefully Friday night, if things plan out as well. But thanks to everybody tuning in. Make sure you subscribe in the Circle SB. You get all the post-game press conferences. Check out our podcast from Thursday, by the way. We went in detail with Division II and Division III recaps. We had Megan Turk, who broke down Division III. Victor broke down Division II. We had Rachel Feek on. Plus, we had our new friend who we're going to bring back in the podcast down the road, too.
Yep, Jordan Schusterman from Cespedes Family Barbecue on the podcast as well.
Yeah, he does a baseball podcast on The Ringer, too. So he was fantastic. We'll try to get him on more often, too. That was fantastic. Got good feedback on that as well. So a lot of content, people. We're not taking days off. No days off, as Bill Belichick would say there. So thanks, everybody. Get some rest. For Victor Anderson in Oklahoma City, I'm Eric Lopez back in the In the Circle Studios household. Good night on night one, or good morning, depending on where you're at. This has been In the Circle, live from Oklahoma City at the Women's College World Series.
Good night, Canada. Sleep well.